Want to see me change the bits of this game? Want to see me do it again? The Messenger. Have you ever heard of a game that changes between 8 bits and 16 bits? Let alone one with a ninja that does it? The first place I heard about it was in an excerpt of a Game Informer magazine that I had in high school. Anyone remember those? I thought that it was a neat concept and really wanted to try it, but I just forgot about it because I had no money and I was a dumb little baby.
I want to squeeze. Oh!
It wasn't until I got my hands on a Nintendo Switch that I finally got to play the game. By then I had my own funds from my first job because I became less of a baby.
Wow!
And thus, The Messenger was one of the first games I ever got with my own hard-earned money, and I had high hopes for what was to come. As a heads up, this video may contain some spoilers. I don't think it'll matter, but take this as your warning anyway. The Messenger was developed by Sabotage Studio. It was released back in 2018 and takes heavy inspiration from the notoriously difficult classic game Ninja Gaiden on the NES. The devs claim that their love for this classic game and ninjas is what sprung its developers to create this grand adventure that would make their younger selves proud. The plot is pretty simple. You control a ninja who becomes the titular messenger. You're given a scroll and told to head to the right. That's about the gist of it. There's a little more to the plot, but it isn't anything too crazy. After his village is saved by the fabled Western hero from the Demon King and his subjects, you, the messenger, starts his journey from the ravaged ninja village and travels across the land through many different locales until reaching the top of the mountain and finding the Tower of Time. The messenger goes back and forth across the past and future while working together with the allies made along the way to eradicate the curse that allows demons to walk the land once and for all. While that about sums it up for the main story, there's also free DLC for the messenger called Picnic Panic or something like that. It expands a little bit more on the story of the main game. It mainly does its own thing in terms of plot relevance, but it's a nice addition to the game overall, especially if you fully complete the DLC. The story's simplicity is definitely its strong suit because it does not take itself too seriously, and it serves its purpose well. It's funny, it's charming, and it accompanies the gameplay nicely. However, with the story not being very present, that means that the gameplay itself has to do a lot more of the heavy lifting. The Messenger is a search action genre of game, much like that of your Metroids or Castlevanias. No, that doesn't sound quite right. There's gotta be another name for the genre, right? Well. One of the things that sets this game apart from the others in the same genre is the way that it handles its search action experience. For example, in Metroid or Castlevania, the player starts at the beginning of the game close to empty-handed or has their strength ripped away from them, and constantly goes back and forth between new and previously visited areas while collecting items and upgrades that allow you to progress through any roadblocks or out-of-reach areas. That is the main reason those games give the player a map from the start in order to keep track of where they are. Most of the time the map starts empty, so it promotes exploration. This method is fine on its own, it has its fans for a reason, but that kind of task can also be daunting to some players, especially those who are unfamiliar or new to the genre. If you are not used to filling out a map from scratch, it can scare some people off from the sheer scope of the job alone. But that's where the messenger comes in. When the game starts, your main goal is to head eastward, and that's it. The game does not give you a map because you do not need one. There may be a secret area with a collectible or maybe even an odd fork in the road being blocked off, but they hardly deviate from the main path. It's pretty easy to keep moving forward and near impossible to be lost. When it comes to the search action staple of the required items and upgrades, there is no need to hunt them down because you are handed them at the start of each new area. And there's no fear of getting lost because each new area teaches you how to use each new upgrade immediately. You start off with 2 pretty useful moves, the Shuriken and the Cloud Step. The Shuriken is simple. You have this little thing called Ki, and the bar is right up here. Throw a Shuriken, Ki gauge goes down. Collect little blue things, Ki gauge goes up. The Shurikens go in a straight line and can damage faraway enemies, so considering that your only other weapon for combat is your sword, it's a nice long range option. The Cloud Step though? Oh my god. This technique? Chef's kiss. Let me tell you, this ain't your mama's double jump. Now don't get me wrong, I love an extra jump in the air as much as the next guy, but the Cloud Step lets you double jump using a little something called
violence.
By attacking an enemy, object, or projectile, you are then able to make another jump in mid-air, as indicated by the lines that appear under your feet. This lasts for as long as there is something to swing at and you don't touch the floor. A good double jump can feel great, but the cloud step feels amazing. This simple tweak is genius because it spurs players on to try to keep up their mid-air massacre for as long as possible with all the tools at their disposal. At most save points, a portal opens up and it takes you to a shop. Inside is a shopkeeper. Between you and me, it kinda looks like they would be a part of the shadow government. You quickly become acquainted with them over the course of the game. They can give you supplemental bits of lore or maybe even some advice. Along with carrying most of the comedic wit and charm on their back, the shopkeep also sells you upgrades to your normal skills and movement. The upgrades cost time shards, but you find plenty of them throughout your adventure, just like your typical coins, rings, rupees, etc. The shop is also where you obtain the necessary items for progression in each new area, like I was talking about before. Luckily, the shopkeep gives them to you for free. The amount of extra mobility you get from these items make the game feel so much better than it already does. The game integrates these items into the platforming beautifully for a nice bit of challenge that scales with you along your journey, and it breathes a new life into the areas that you've already been through before, but I'll get to that in a bit. The climbing claws are the first of the handouts given to you on your journey. Any flat, vertical surface is yours to conquer. Any walls that you can't climb are easily discernible from their lumpy, concave shape. Although your climbing speed is as fast as molasses, you can wall jump like you would in a Mega Man X game and move much faster that way. The wingsuit gives you a nice glide that slows your fall speed. Gusts of air can send you upward wherever they may be, but the main appeal of this gear is the mobility in the air. By attacking while gliding, you can easily extend your air time by refunding your cloud step. The rope dart, aka the grapple hook, shoots out in a straight line and launches you forward towards anything it can latch onto. Its range is only a little longer than your sword, but whether it be enemies, objects, or even the terrain, the short bursts of speed that you get from it is phenomenal. And if performed in the air, guess what else you can do? Once you've been decked out with all your new tools, is the part of the game where you make your way to the Tower of Time. After you complete the trials of that area, you are sent 500 years into the future. This marks the first instance where the game shifts from 8-bit to 16-bit. Everything about the aesthetics are enhanced. The messenger himself even has some new duds. See that sick hat? The backgrounds and foregrounds have much more color and detail, and the music that we've heard before has been remixed to have even more instrumentation, as well as some new tracks to listen to. Even in the future, the game plan doesn't change much from here though. You continue heading eastward until you reach your next goal. It's at the end of your journey in the future that you loop around the world back to the ninja village where you started, but this time more desolate. The only sign of life is a lone wanderer, and like the fabled hero of the West that passed the mantle of the messenger onto you, you do the same. This doesn't last long, however, because you suck at keeping an eye on your messenger, and he dies. You come out of the world's shortest retirement to finish the job. Now this is where the real search action begins. The that tested you in the Tower of Time has figured that in order to end the cycle of passing the scroll, we are introduced to the curse of the music box that needs to be broken. In order to do that, it's our job to collect the various music notes scattered across the land. It's at this point that we finally use the scroll that we've been lugging around the world for the entirety of the game for its intended purpose. It's a map. Okay, now I lied earlier when I said that the messenger doesn't use a map. I'm sorry. Now, I wasn't completely lying. Like I mentioned before, up until this point in the game, it wasn't needed. You were able to go through everything just fine because it was a straightforward journey. So much so that you go in a complete circle, and I like that subversion of expectations. Especially since now the map is not nearly as daunting as it would have been at the start of the game. With the exception of a few new areas, you've already experienced the whole map. You know the areas fairly well, so exploring them is not a chore or something to be feared, because you already know what to expect. That's not to say there aren't any surprises, but if you made it this far, you'll be just fine. The new areas are also fairly straightforward and isolated enough, so just like before, it's almost impossible for you to get lost in this world that is now open to you. As you backtrack through familiar lands, you'll find these glowing blue rings. If you pass through them, you'll find that you'll travel to the opposite point in time that you were in before. Weaving back and forth in time breathes new life into the areas that you've been through before. Finding the pathways that were left undiscovered prior is like solving a nice puzzle that has actually been staring you in the face this whole time. It just took a little bit to finally gather the pieces. I want to touch on the music while I'm here because I really want to put a spotlight on it. The music was almost entirely composed by Rainbow Dragon Eyes, with a couple of guest tracks composed by Keiji Yamagishi, who composed the music for the classic Ninja Gaiden games. The chiptune tracks are an absolute treat in both 8-bit and 16-bit sound fonts. I'd say it's reminiscent of both the NES and the Genesis, with the 8-bit tracks representing the past and the 16-bit tracks representing the future. Even though the 16-bit tracks have more instrumentation, don't sleep on the 8-bit tracks, because Rainbow Dragon Eyes emulates the sound of the instruments like the consoles of old did, but without the same limitations of the past, thus creating tracks that sound more full and accompanied, for lack of a better term. The two styles also have their own little flair, and you can really tell the difference if you listen to the past and future version of the same track, my favorite being Bamboo Boogaloo. Whenever you do time travel, the transition between the two styles is seamless and it helps keep the flow of the game amazingly smooth. Now, I'm not an expert in the music field, but while I gush about how the music made me feel, I can safely say that if you enjoyed chiptunes or music from older games, I implore you to listen to the soundtrack if you can. The whole OST is on Rainbow Dragon Eyes' YouTube channel, so please go support the artist if you can. Now, to backpedal a bit, I mentioned the gems before, and how they are mainly a form of currency, but that's not the only use for them. When you lose all of your health, you die, per usual in games, except, in this case, a little demon named Quarble actually revives you and sends you back to the last checkpoint. For a price, that is. After he revives you, he will tag alongside you and take all the gems you normally would be picking up until he gets like 50 or so. Then he goes away. It's a very minor nuisance, but one that could be much worse since dying was more than likely your own mistake. Action and consequence and all that jazz. I do enjoy the way the whole game over concept has been phased out from this game and that dying has an interesting twist to it. There are no extra lives to speak of in the messenger, and not only do I like that because it fits the motif of time travel that's been laid bare throughout this game, but getting a game over would break the pace otherwise, and they make sure to give an adequate penalty to the player for their mistakes. Okay, I know I just said that there are no lives in the messenger, but I lied. Again. Okay, I know, I'm sorry, jeez, okay. But I wasn't completely lying either. Everything I said before is true, but only on your first playthrough. Once you beat the game for the first time, your save file will be completed, per se. If you select the same save file from the start menu, you get the option for New Game Plus. If you start the New Game Plus, you'll start the game over from the beginning, but you get to transfer all your gear and upgrades and then some. Right before you actually start the game with the New Game Plus, you get to choose an item that you would normally have to hunt for in the story. This is awesome because it saves you time with subsequent playthroughs by letting you skip certain segments. The only downside is that you take more damage and Quarble takes the gems up front for each death. If you don't have enough gems the next time you die, then that is where the real game over is. When you get a game over, the messenger doesn't play around. You don't get sent back to the last checkpoint. You don't get sent back to the start of the area. You get sent back to the start menu, like an NES game, with all traces of progress gone. And, to kick you while you're already down, the New Game Plus file is reverted back by 1. Essentially, it wipes your entire save. You can actually stack the New Game Plus file, but each time you do another New Game Plus on the same file, you take more damage and Quarble demands more gems up front for each death. I believe this can be stacked up until you're able to select all the required items needed to progress, essentially skipping major steps in the late game, but admittedly I've only been able to get up to New Game Plus 2. As much of a kick in the nuts it is to lose your save file, I still think that the way the Messenger does the New Game Plus is great, because it makes sure that the game doesn't get stale by always challenging the player, especially since it does so to the player the more that they play, always pushing you to do better with each increasing difficulty. The Messenger quickly became one of my favorite games to play. In fact, it's the game that made me love the genre as a whole. The story, although simple, does exactly what it needs to do. Interacting with all the characters is always a good time. The gameplay is extremely fun and everything is just beautiful to look at. All the while, some great music accompanies you throughout the entire journey. This is a game I can highly recommend to anyone, whether they be newbies or veterans of the surge action genre. Okay, I'm done fucking with you guys. It's Metroidvania. Duh, I'm sure you saw the title of the video. It's a pretty cheap game at base price, so it shouldn't break the bank or anything. I implore you to pick it up so you can experience all that I've talked about for yourself and see just how good of a game it truly is. I definitely don't see enough people talk about this game, but it's clearly well received and loved by fans. I mean, Sabotage Studio even came out with their new game, Sea of Stars, so they definitely raked in some profits and their name is out there in the market. Ninjas are cool, time travel's awesome. I just really enjoyed this game and I think it deserves the praise. Hey! This is the part of the video where I tell you to do the YouTube things. Like, bell, subscribe, man, you know, all that. You know what to do. But, more than anything, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.